Americans. He speaks at schools, he speaks in churches, he speaks with teens. He and his wife Michelle, who's here today, it's nice to see you, have 2 children, one who is at party and one who is younger, and a boy and a girl. And Erik, when he finished here in 1999, I'm sure that you'll hear some of the story, but it was a profound story in a lot of ways about resilience, about resourcefulness, to use our theme, and about trying to find his better self in a life, in a world that maybe he didn't initially see his better self. But he's done a spectacular job. I wanted to end in terms of my introduction by telling you that last night our daughter came to the event. She's in medical school, as most of you know, and she loves your talk. And she said to me, Erik has cerebral palsy. She said, I spent a month in a rotation working with cerebral palsy patients. She said it was one of the toughest experiences in her med school. And she said, that speaker was amazing. He said what I wish the whole Oregon medical school could hear, because he found ways to make himself thrive and deal with an affliction that makes him one of the greatest examples. In fact, she said, I'd love to do a podcast with him. So it was a wonderful tribute from her. Please join me. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Joya. Incredibly blessed to be here. I love this place, and you guys are what makes MBA what it is. And I look out there and I see so many friends and people that were classmates and friends from growing up, and some of you were my teachers and are still here, making a difference. And so I never pass up an opportunity to come back and talk, and I always learn something about myself when I do these speeches. I never give the same speech twice. Well, I guess I did last night, but at each time I try to write something new. And I guess I've been sitting back there and listening to 2 very riveting presentations, and I had a bunch of jokes because I thought I'd go after Jody, and so I got nothing on IT, no jokes, but I do want to give you guys a chance before I start talking to if you want to. I've got one little assignment for you because you guys gave me assignments when I was here. So if you could stand up, because we've been sitting for like 45 minutes since I've been here. So stand up, please, for a second, if you don't mind. Get your blood flowing a little bit. And your job here is to turn to the person next to you and tell them why you became a teacher, essentially, or coach, or member of MBA, whatever your profession is. I want you to take 20 seconds, just one sentence, tell the person next to you why you became, this occupation. So do that. All right, I hope everybody's had a chance to say something. As I'm getting close to 40, I don't sit for very long, so that hopefully that helped us all a little bit. So I want to say thank you to my wife, Michelle, for being here. Without her, I wouldn't be the person I am. And, I talk a lot about how choosing MBA was probably one of the most important choices of my life, but I think choosing Michelle as my bride was the most important. So thank you for being here. And I hope to make a difference in your life, with something that I say. That's why I'm here. That's what life is about, is to help each other in this world, because we're not all that different. Yeah, I've had challenges, but we all have challenges. So my prayer and hope is that you guys get something out of this and it makes your life better. Last night, my daughter Grace, who's a rising kindergartner at Harding this year, woke us up at 3:30 with growing pains. And, I'm lying there in bed with her. She's kind of crying and talking and exhausted. And I was thinking, growing pains. That's what the students at MBA are going through. And really, as long as we're all alive, hopefully we're all feeling growing pains, because we're all continuing to grow and make changes and improve ourselves. And I don't think there's a more important job, other than maybe being a mother and a father, of doing what you guys do. I mean, you are teachers, coaches, staff at MBA, and every day you influence and you're a part of young boys, who are becoming men, their lives. And even if they come from wonderful homes, like I did, where I had great parents, there's still things that my parents didn't quite do for me. And a lot of you in this room filled voids for me and helped me to become who I am today. And so I just want to say, you guys are so important, and that's why I'm here. Everyone has a story, and the stories of our lives are part fact and part fiction. And the facts might include our names, where we're from, what we look like, the people, places, and experiences that shape us. The fictional stories are what we make up about ourselves, who we think we are, our attitudes, and what we believe we can do and who we believe we can become. I would like to share how attending MBA helped me change my own narrative and gave me the skills to write a new story for myself and live each day to the fullest. My story began when I was born prematurely and adopted about a month later out of the NICU. When I was 2 years old and not yet walking, my parents took their adopted child to the doctor and found out that I had, as Mr. Joya said, mild cerebral palsy. At that time, the doctor said I would never walk upstairs without the use of a railing. I also had a severe stuttering problem and couldn't answer the telephone or ask a question in school without struggle and heartache. I had 2 surgeries to lengthen and reposition muscles to enable me to walk, and I attended speech therapy throughout high school and college. And growing up, I longed to be a normal kid. I remember always keeping a smile on my face, and you guys probably remember that too if you were here. But I never let anybody know how much I hurt on the inside. I remember closing the door to my room and watching a video of myself walking and crying for hours. I used to pray to God and ask, how could you do this to me? Have I done something wrong? I kept living my life, but at times I felt broken and defeated, and understandably so, given the challenges that I had at a young age. Some of you in this room know my mom and dad, and they gave me every possible resource to succeed. They provided me unconditional love, a great education, and health care, as I mentioned. One of the greatest gifts my parents gave me was not putting limits on what I could achieve. My dad was tough, an attorney, Vietnam veteran, and captain in the Naval Reserves. He wanted me to learn to fight my own battles and make my own choices. He did not want to disable me more by doing life for me. As a parent now, I know how hard that must have been for him to see me struggle at times, but I'm thankful to my parents for letting me struggle and learn how to thrive on my own. And I remember the process of choosing MBA. My parents were concerned the rigorous academics combined with my physical challenge may have been too much for me to handle. On top of that, my math scores were not up to par after the sixth grade. I can still see the image of meeting with Dr. Pascal, the headmaster at the time, who said I was welcome to attend MBA if I was willing to do math tutoring the summer before seventh grade. I wanted to go to MBA because I wanted to be at the best school and see what I could do, but I knew it would never be easy. In the end, I struggled at MBA in all the good ways a young man should struggle in preparation to meet the future challenges and opportunities that come with a successful life. It's worth noting that Mr. Wims was my pre-algebra teacher, and he fixed my math right up so I'd be a great financial planner one day. So thanks, Coach. My classmates at MBA, many of whom are in this room, inspired me to become the best version of myself. Robert Sawyer asked me to talk about the class of 1999. He said that, we may be regarded as the best ever to walk the halls of MBA. He said that, not me. He was 98, and I guess then we came along. But I could mention the state championships, Robbie Quinn's national championship in debate, here. The record SAT scores of our offensive line or future professional athletes. But those accomplishments are byproducts of the commitment to the ideals of MBA, gentleman, scholar, athlete. Those were standards we took very seriously because we had high aspirations for ourselves and each other. We encouraged and inspired each other within the crucible of the MBA education. Yes, we competed, but we also grew to love and respect each other as brothers. It's worth noting that my classmates were gentlemen in the way they handled my differences and challenges. They were always inclusive and treated me with respect. Looking back at my time in MBA, I was never bullied. And I know that's a big deal these days. And I guess I always felt like because of my struggles with CP and stuttering, I had a lot of empathy for other people, and I just imagined that inside they were hurting maybe a little bit like I did. And so I always tried to love my classmates the best I could and give my best effort, and I think they respected me. But just, looking back, to not have to deal with bullying in my life at MBA or never feel made fun of is pretty astounding. And really, it's touching to think about. Now, my classmates gave me a hard time like everybody else, but that was just part of the fun. Now, this past spring, we celebrated our 20th reunion, and the depth of friendship I share with many of my classmates cannot be put into words or valued. To sum up the class of 1999, when you put smart men with big hearts and strong work ethic together, really great things are possible. And I think that's the truth about MBA. So looking back, being an athlete was challenging for me, although I loved sports growing up. In the 7th grade at MBA, I played football and wrestled. And my dream was always to play high school football. After breaking my foot wrestling in the 8th grade, I gave up on sports, myself, and my dream. The next 2 years were pretty difficult, and I felt pretty low. Halfway through the football season, my sophomore year, I remember sitting in Dan Herring's Modern European History class, not paying attention, and looking out the window, literally looking out the window and listening to him say the word dadgum like 7 times, and thinking, I've got to play football. I'm a sophomore. I want to play my junior and senior year. And my dream of football had become stronger than my fear of failure. So I approached the coaches and asked if I could play my junior year. And I knew they could possibly say no. I told them that I knew I would never give the team touchdowns, but I promised to give NBA football my heart, and that's what I did. And I didn't share this last night, but my dad, who didn't do much intervening, as I said, he didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. And I remember he went over and met with Coach Bowers and the coaches, and he said, look, if Eric's going to play, I want you to treat him like every other person on the team. And I just thank my dad so much for that. And I thank the coaches for treating me, as if I didn't have any limitations. Every day I played football was a gift. I never missed a workout or practice. And I remember thinking back then, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And I thought, if I can just work so hard to where my CP and limitations, if I can get as good as I can get and not be our weakest link, that was my goal. And I went from a guy who would never walk upstairs, who was told he'd never walk upstairs as a young kid, to running the stairs in the football stadium. Or I remember running with Will McMurray, down to Vanderbilt, running the stairs in Vanderbilt Stadium and back. I think with Coach Redmond, and that was prior to starting the football season. That we won a state championship, and I remember I at least beat the offensive lineman back to campus. So I remember the workouts and practices were physically, mentally, and emotionally draining for me. It was hard for me to complete homework at night after practice because I was so exhausted. And most nights, honestly, I would cry tears of joy driving home from practice. Literally, I would be in tears. And in playing football, I was living more fully than I ever had before. And when we won the state championship my senior year, my football career was over, but my struggle with CP did not own me anymore. And for the first time, I felt like I was free. And it was my experience on the athletic field that helped me to finally learn how to study. I became a better student by putting the same heartfelt effort I discovered playing football into studying. And I think one of my fondest memories is how much I disliked my senior English class with Dr. Batten. He was a demanding teacher, and I was struggling to meet his expectations, and my grades reflected his displeasure. And I think I'll say one thing about that. I respect Dr. Batten so much for holding his ground and being tough. I think one of the things as teachers and coaches is you've got to walk that line between kind of, encouraging and loving, but also holding that space for kids to struggle and holding that container for people to figure out, how they can get to that next level. And he did that for me. So he's holding his ground, and I made a choice to visit Dr. Batten frequently and ask for help. I started to improve my writing, and by the end of the senior year, I was making A's on every paper I gave to him and got exempt from his final exam. And this story is a microcosm of where I began and ended MBA. I learned there's no better feeling than putting all my heart into something and seeing what I can do. After graduating from Baylor, I wrote Dr. Batten a thank you note and told him I made an A on every paper I wrote in college. And so I've talked about being an athlete and a scholar, but I think being a gentleman is the most important of the MBA ideals. And without honor and acting with respect and kindness towards others, accomplishments in this world mean nothing. I remember when I was struggled in the classroom or on the football field, I would remind myself that at the very least, I was struggling with my honor and integrity intact. And one phrase I learned from my football coach was leave it better than you found it. These are simple but powerful words I try to live by each day in everything that I do, and also how I treat others. A culture of mutual respect and high standards requires a commitment from the entire MBA community, students, teachers, coaches, and parents. I can recall another lesson I learned from my football coach. So it was my senior year, and something happened in practice one time that I felt very embarrassed about, and I was crying after practice, and I thought about quitting, and my teammates had kind of talked to me about, everything's going to be okay. And it was I just felt embarrassed. And That night, I remember when Coach Bowers, he called me at home that night to check on me. And this spoke volumes about what a gentleman does. Even though I was not a star player, he showed me respect and I felt valued. And so I didn't say this last night, but I want to contrast that story of I was in a math class one time, and I'm not going to say who it was, but somebody made a joke about people with CP and drawing a graph crooked. And now this teacher didn't know that I had mild cerebral palsy. I'd never talked about it really until my junior year. So I didn't say anything, but it hurt my feelings. And about 2 weeks later, I got the courage to come to that teacher and say, hey, you remember when you made that comment about, kind of if you have cerebral palsy, you draw a graph like this? And he didn't apologize or acknowledge my hurt. And I just want to say that you guys don't need to be perfect when you're dealing with students. You don't. But if you make a mistake, if you say you're sorry, that speaks volumes to them and about how to be an adult later in life. And so I just, not to, I don't judge that person. It's not a big deal, but it is something I think about. And I think about the contrast really between what Coach Bowers did and what that teacher didn't do. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Attending MBA transformed my story from overcoming my disabilities to discovering and honing my capabilities. I began to see my own strengths and become more accepting of my weaknesses. I developed honor, toughness, courage, and a strong work ethic. I learned to live with wholeheartedness and vulnerability, and my MBA education set me on the best possible path for success and prepared me to take leadership roles later in life. So the MBA story is not over when people get admitted or even when they graduate. At 39 years old, I still strive to be a gentleman, scholar, and athlete. I'm not perfect, nor have I arrived. As an adult with mild cerebral palsy, I'm realizing that continuing to be an athlete is critically important to my long-term health, and I'm so thankful for my football experience at MBA because I know how to do that. Also, being principled, courteous, and an honorable man is critical to my professional and personal success. So is being a lifelong learner and having the confidence to try new things and change. And recently, one of the things that I realized I gave up on as an insecure junior high student was artistic expression. So I've recently started taking electric guitar lessons in an effort to face my fear, try something new, and get free from that old story. And I decided last night after my speech, so I have this red guitar, and I'm going to name it, it's called Big Red. So every time I pick it up and I feel like that, really when I play guitar, it's like that junior high insecurity comes back. I'm like, God, I suck. But if I name it Big Red, it'll remind me that I can do whatever I want because I went to MBA and I know how to overcome and do things. And in closing, I want to say that recently I opened my adoption records with the hopes of meeting my biological parents. I watched many episodes of This Is Us, and it just really it helps me get there. Honestly, it's a wonderful show. But unfortunately, I learned that both my parents have passed away. And the first page of my file with the state was a letter from my amazing sister, Jennifer, who had been looking for me for the last 15 years. And we talk every week now and just celebrated her birthday together this past Saturday. In addition to my sister, I have an older brother by adoption, nieces, nephews, aunts, and cousins. And they're really good-looking people. They look just like me. It's amazing. I was also able to get to know my biological grandmother for 6 months prior to her passing away. All have welcomed me into their lives and added to my story. I was not prepared to see my birth name was Jason Lee Harris. That was really weird to see that for the first month of my life I had a different name. And I have thought if I ever become a country music star in my retirement after playing guitar that my stage name could be Jason Lee Harris. It'd be really good. But in my adoption paperwork, I also learned and saw that my adoptive parents were asked if they were willing to adopt me, even though I was premature and may have health problems. And I had never known that they knew that much about me before my adoption. And it was incredibly moving to see that question and their answer in writing. So my parents chose me, and they changed the story of my life forever. And I was given the opportunity for a better life. And what I told the kids last night and their parents was that they chose MBA, but also remember that MBA chose them. And I would say that you all have been chosen to be a part of the Montgomery Bell Academy family, where you're loved, encouraged, and most certainly challenged, even as teachers and coaches. You were chosen, with that comes responsibility, so be thankful for this incredible opportunity. And remember, it's not how you start, but how you finish. I think it's very important for teachers and coaches and faculty and staff to all be, the ideals of a gentleman or a gentlewoman and operate from a place of love and truth. You're the examples for the students. So strive to be the best version of yourself, and please commit yourselves to the ideals of gentleman, scholar, athlete, because they will serve you well as you write the rest of your life story. So I want to close with this question. Imagine if this was your last year to teach at MBA and your last year to make an impact here. I'm wondering, what would you do? Who would you be? It's a new year, and you get to write a new story. So thanks for having me.